Hello, and welcome to Kumi Now. I hope you got to see that opening video. It really touched my heart. Thank you for joining us for this latest online gathering as we talk about Bedouin rights in Palestine and Israel. My name is Mariana Harris. I'm a minister of the United Church of Canada, and my home is Vancouver, on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This week in Canada, we are marking the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as we try to right the wrongs that colonialism brought to the Indigenous people here. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that our webinar is being broadcast live on Facebook, and we will be posted on YouTube. If you want to make sure your photo does not appear online, please turn off your camera. But if you don't mind, leave it on so that everyone can see your smiling face. We would also deeply appreciate it if you could quickly share one of the links that are being put in the chat so that others may join. As usual, if you have an idea or project you'd like to share for up to 5 minutes in a future meeting, please email us at kumi@kuminow.com. Now it's time for our weekly activism survey. We will now launch the poll. Please note that there are 3 questions, so scroll down for the third. Thank you for doing that. The answer to number 2, what is the name of the Israeli plan to relocate Bedouin tribes, is the Prarer Plan. And the answer to number 3, about a dunam, it is an area of land equal to what? The answer is the third answer, 0.001 square kilometers. Before the end of the Ottoman Empire and during the early years of the British Mandate, the size of a dunam was 919.3 square meters. But in 1928, the metric dunam of 1,000 square meters was adopted. We hope that you will find this session interesting and informative. I'd like to start by having everyone you'll be seeing today introduce themselves. So let's start with Omar.
Thank you, Mariana. My name is Omar Harami. I work at Sabil, Jerusalem, and I will be sharing with you an update from the ground from Palestine and Israel, recent developments in the last week. It's a pleasure.
Our guest today is Halil Al-Amour of the Regional Council of Unrecognized Villages. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Halil Al-Amour. I'm a member and one of the founders of the RCOV. RCOV is the Regional Council of the Unrecognized Bedouin Villages in the Negev, and also a secretary member of the NCF, the Negev Coexistence Forum, a group of Jews and Bedouins that trying to promote equality and recognition of the unrecognized villages. I am a retired teacher. I worked for a long time as a teacher, and now I am just working in tourism, hosting groups and people in my village, and trying to introduce them to the Bedouin life and all the challenges that we are facing in the Negev and the Nakab. And also completed a short course of a tour guide. And so I'm a tour guide and a lawyer. Lawyer is a hobby. It's just to help the Bedouin families that need my support. I'm not working with that as a profession or something that making my living. And I'm happy with my pension. So I'm trying to help and support the families and protecting and supporting and promoting the recognition of the unrecognized villages. This is my destination in this world.
Thank you for that introduction. And the ironic or serendipitous thing is that I actually visited at Halil's home in 2010. So I'm really pleased he's our speaker today. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Omar to give us an update on what's going on in Palestine.
Thank you, Marianne. So an update from this week. COVID continues to be on the rise in both Israel and Palestine, West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The number of deaths continue to increase per day, and there are different approaches and discussions in both governments in Palestine and Israel on how to deal with it. Some are arguing on just that we need to learn how to live with it and to accept it. No measures are enough to control it. Others are asking for a return for restrictions. For people who were thinking or considering coming to Palestine and Israel, Sabil has canceled its witness visit in October, of course, and we're really not sure when to announce the next witness visit because it continues to have lots of uncertainty. This week we had it was the Jewish holidays, and on average in the past week, every day 1,000 settlers went into Al-Aqsa Mosque. There is more visits and more settler incursions into Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some of them even started to pray, which is against the already existing agreements between the people who control Al-Aqsa and Israeli government. So tension continues to rise in Jerusalem, and it's at the verge of an explosion. Khalida Jarrar, many of you were engaged in the campaign that was asking for her release. She was released this week. Before 3 months, her daughter died unexpectedly while she was alone in her apartment due to a rare stroke of natural causes. There was a campaign for her to be released so that she could attend her daughter's funeral, but that was denied by the Israeli government. Khalida Jarrar has spent in the last 4 years, over close to 30 months in Israeli jails, most of them under administrative detention without being accused. Khalida Jarrar is one of the Palestinian female leaders of the Palestinian movement. She is also a member of the Palestinian parliament. So it was a very difficult week for her as she left prison. The first trip she did was to visit her daughter's grave, Suha. This week was was terrible. Over 8 Palestinians have been killed in the past week. Osama Sbih on the left, he was supposed to be getting married in the next week. His fiancée, his wife, to be instead of celebrating their marriage, they have she participated in his funeral. Also Zakaria Bedouin, who's a father of 3 kids, who just received earlier this year. His new daughter was also shot and killed by the Israeli army. 8 young Palestinian men have been shot. Young people have been shot and killed by Israeli snipers. Israel is tending to use more live ammunition, targeting the heads of Palestinian protesters. Please hold the family of Zakaria and Osama and all of the people who have died this week in your prayers. Very interestingly, when the Palestinians with the United Nations General Council, 75th General Council, many thought that Israel would even address the topic of Palestine. Bennett went and delivered a speech as if there is no Palestinian people, as if Israel is not occupying an entire population of over 6 million people, with millions of Palestinian refugees waiting for their return. Israel is in complete denial, international community believes that that Bennett addressed the international community only after receiving the blessing of the US administration not to address the Palestinian issue, which is very troubling because we continue to fight to remain on the agenda of the international community. Within the international community, our problem started when the League of Nations decided to split our country into two parts without considering without asking us or receiving our permission. And today, the international community continues, unfortunately, to try to silence and just to behave as if the issue is over. Thank you. You are on mute, Mariam.
Thank you, Omar. A very sobering report. We now return to our main issue of the week, Bedouin rights, and our special guest, Halil Al-Amour of the Regional Council of Unrecognized Villages. As he speaks, if you think of a question, please type it in the chat, and I will try to ask as many of them as possible when we get to the Q&A. Mr. Al-Amour, please begin your presentation.
Thank you again. I will share my presentation here in just a second. Yes, here it is. I mean to share screen. And this is the screen. I hope you can see my presentation here on the screen. And there it is. You can make it larger. I think, yes, here it is. Yes, it is something we spoke about a few days ago. It was the JNF. And but normally I speak about the unrecognized villages and the story of the unrecognized villages. This is a general view of Asera, my village, from outside, as you can see. And here is a Nakab, the Negev. So I don't know if there is a way that we can change the pictures here on the side so we can see. Yes, I see. I see the map in the right. So this is the Nakab, the southern side of Israel, Palestine. It's called the Nakab, the Negev in Hebrew, Nakab. It's 2/3 of the state. This is 13 million dunams, and Mariana mentioned the dunam a few minutes ago. This is the dunam, 13 million dunam, or 13,000 square kilometers. It's a huge area. Only 10% of the population of Israel live in this area. It's empty almost. So what happened? Most of the Bedouin that lived in a Nakab, the Nakab was populated mainly or only by Bedouins in the past, till 1948. In 1948, most of the Bedouin were expelled to the neighboring Arab countries. In this side, we have Jordan. And in this side, you have Sinai, Egypt. So most of the 90,000 people were expelled to the neighboring Arab countries. Only 11,000 people remained. They survived the Nakba, the disaster. And those 11,000 were relocated into this area, which we call in Arabic the Siyaj area. Even in Hebrew, we say Izor Hasaik, Mantagat Siyaj. Siyaj is like the fence area. You can call it the fence area. Even though that we didn't have really a physical fence here around this area, you see the highlighted area here. It is only 10% of the Negev land. So if the Negev land is 13 million dunam, it's only 1.3 million dunams. It's also large area, but the Bedouin that was relocated to this area was growing and growing and growing, and this area was minimized all the time, but was resized all the time. And if we talked about 10% in 1948, today we are talking about less than 5% for all the Bedouin in the Negev. Even though that the Bedouin population today are about 300,000 people. We are 1/3 of the population of the Negev, of the Nakab. We are 1/3 of the population, about 33 or 34%, but we don't have 33 of the Negev. We have only 4 or 5% up to now. And the main or the final solution for all that is talking about like 2-3%, which is really ridiculous, bad solution. That all the Bedouin rejecting that solution. So here you can see a document of that was sent by the Secretary of the State of Colonies, that confirmed by the commissioner that was met with the Bedouin sheikhs of the Bedouin families in 1921 with Winston Churchill. And in this document, they are promising the Bedouin families or the Bedouin tribes here to serve their land and customs and the traditions, and everything could not be affected. But unfortunately, all these things was really was not fulfilled and broken after the establishment of Israel. This is the fence area, or Izor Hasaig, as I said, or Mantiqat al-Siyaj. As you can see, we just enlarged it a bit. And here you can see the red spots here are 7. Those 7 spots are the 7 Bedouin towns that the government established and recognized. And they tried to take all the Bedouin families from the neighboring Arab countries, the neighboring villages, sorry, and pushing them to those villages. As you can see, the black arrows around. And so we have a lot of IDPs, a lot of internally displaced people to these villages. And the rest of the people are in those blue and those purple circles that resemble assembling the unrecognized villages. We have 35 unrecognized villages, beside the very few that are newly recognized, about 10 that are newly recognized. But fortunately, their situation is very similar to the circles here, which means that they are still suffering and challenging very, very hard conditions, and they were not really completely recognized and have the very basic services like infrastructures, electricity, running water, and everything. They still suffering. So I can say that we still have 45, not 35, but the 45 is still unrecognized if we are talking about the situation and the conditions. Here is the proper plan that you mentioned also in the beginning, and here is the plan. You see all the X's here. It means that those villages will be removed and the people will be moved to or displaced to another area. So That's why this plan was dismissed in 2013. Even it has already passed the first reading in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament. It's due to a huge demonstration here in Israel inside with the Bedouin community, and also the support of the European community and the UN and all the parties that criticize the plan and ask the Israeli government to withdraw the plan and shelve it and open in a new in a keen negotiation with the Bedouin community. Here you can see a very, very hard and brutal way where the village of Al-Araqib was uprooted and demolished for the first time in 2010. Here you can see the olive trees were uprooted. You can see the hay packs of the animals were already burned, and the village was razed really at 5 o'clock in the morning, very, very early in the morning, was with helicopters in the air, and it was like a huge war, like a World War III here. Here you can see the sheikh of this tribe of Al-Araqib, Sheikh Sayyah. Many of you, I think they know them. He is living in the cemetery now. You can see his tent, and you can see the graves, the graveyard here. And he live in the cemetery, and he always says something very, very interesting. I can never forget it. He says, "This is the only place that the dead people are protecting the alive ones," and he's right. This is the new forest that they are planting near Al-Araqib. It's surrounding Al-Araqib, and what it's called, you can read here, the Ambassador's Forest. The Ambassador's Forest. This is the way that the JNF and Israel in general are trying to recruit the support of European countries and other countries to support the project and planting the trees, uprooting the Bedouin trees and villages, and planting new trees for the JNF, which is really bad. Here you can see Sheikh Sayyah accompanied by attorney Shahd ibn Barri when he was released from the prison, and here he is on the horse again, and in a protest here and everywhere. The other village that can be really a good demonstration of the displacement and the discrimination of the Bedouin here is Al-Hiran. Al-Hiran is a very and Attir also. Attir and Al-Hiran are twin villages. And this view is from Attir, but we will see Al-Hiran soon. They are very, very peaceful villages, very successful villages, and they are living here for years, for generations. And they were, many of the houses were demolished, and the people were forced to sign and agree to move from there to Hura, the nearest Bedouin village or town. Here is Attir, you can see again, and here is Al-Hiran. Al-Hiran and Attir, as you can see, are twin villages. And here is the total plan, is the new plan that was issued and published of the new Jewish town, Orthodox Jewish town, that will be established on the ruins of Al-Hiran. It will be called nothing than Hiran. It will be called Hiran. Even the same name. They will demolish Al-Hiran and build Hiran. This is Al-Hiran. You can see the animal pens in the background. You can see the olive trees here. You can see it's very, very successful village, and it will be uprooted and moved to Al-Hiran. This is the plan, as you can see. Now I'm taking you for a short tour in my village, Asera. As you can see, this is the name of the village. This is the sign in the entrance of the village. You see the three main things that characterizing the unrecognized village is, one of them is there is no signs. You can never know that you arrived to the unrecognized village. That you don't know if this is the village that you are seeking or not. And the other thing is they don't appear in the map. And there is no roads also. There is no infrastructures to the village. There are no running water, no electricity, nothing. Many things. But the most important thing is the signs. So we broke this thing and we added our sign, as you can see, as is Asera in 3 languages. And we added something here in Hebrew and the bottom, which is established in the Ottoman times. And below it, you can see a special sign that you will never see in any place in the world, which says demolitions ahead. You can see deers ahead, camels ahead, but demolitions ahead or bulldozer ahead, you will see only in Asera. So this is the deed of my family when they purchased the land in the British period. It was in the 23rd of November in 1921. This year we are celebrating 100 years of the purchase. But if you ask Israel, they don't recognize it. They say you are not registered in the Tabu, in the ILA, in the Israeli Land Authority. So they don't. Is my house and here's my place, and here is my wife and Muhammad, the little Muhammad. Now he grew, and they are baking our bread. And I wanted to say something about the unrecognized villages. What does it mean? So they exist and they don't exist. Nobody sees that. No addresses. No living always under the threat of demolitions. No address, so the address is the tribe, and you will never receive the mail. Having no right to vote to the local councils, local elections. We only participate in the general elections. No public transportation. We are paying all the taxes, but we receive very minimal services. The infant mortality is very high. It is 4 times higher than the Jewish sector. Very few kindergartens, no running water in many villages, no electricity, no connecting to electricity, no daycares, no right to ownership to the land of the land, and a very long list of no. But there is only one yes, which is the bulldozer. We have a lot of bulldozers that bulldoze our houses. And here you can see a Bedouin family that their house was just demolished. This is, I know the family and the place. And if it's not enough, you can see it is very quickly they can close areas and declare them or announce them as military areas, and people cannot enter them. This is one of the ways. This is another way. If family live or a tribe or a village live near a highway, they build the highway, they build the fences here, and the people cannot cross. They don't have any access to the main road. And in emergency cases, they have to go round and round and round, and people really can endanger their life. Here you can see them posting demolition orders in all the houses, including our house here. It's my house, and nobody can even talk to them. They are protected and accompanied by the police, and they are all armed, and you cannot do anything. So what did we do? As you can see, we are demonstrating all the time in Beersheba, which is the capital of the Nakab, is the main city here, and in Jerusalem. And Muhammad have already grown, and he is protesting with us and helping me. He says that I am invisible. That's why because you don't want to see me. And in the back, it's stop, brother. This is our camp near the Knesset, where we were protesting the home demolitions. here is me in this in the left talking to the media, and in the right my friend Ibrahim Abu Afash talking to the media, talking to politicians. And here in the right, the previous Swiss ambassador Walter Hafner, and here in the top you can see me with Professor James Anaya, the previous special rapporteur for indigenous people rights. And here is a group of Belgium activists that was hiking and biking and touring and visiting all the unrecognized Bedouin villages. It was really very, very, very good act. And beside all that, we are strengthening our community. We are building our mosques and paving the dirt roads and laying the pipes of the water and putting electricity by generators. And later we are using solar panels. As you can see, this is my solar panels on my roof. And and more, we go to court, we partner with other civil NGOs, and we create alternative plans and we present them to the government. But unfortunately, they don't recognize them and they don't accept them up to now. The planners that sit in Jerusalem and they're air conditioned there, they don't see us, we are invisible. They see all the area empty. And we come here and inform you about the situation. How can you help us? And I know that you do much and you visit the Negev and try to do something. You can make this now, and you can bring it to your community. You can visit us. You can join our mailing list, and you can write to your parliament members and Israeli embassy and everything. And I want to say thank you, a big thank you for your time and for the invitation.
Okay, sorry about that. Too many things to think of at the same time. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alamour, for sharing with us about Bedouin rights.
Thank you.
We'd now like to introduce our action for the day and give everyone a few minutes to get started on it before we start the question and answer section. As you can see on the slide, what we'd like you to do is to smuggle a sheep to the Israeli Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Yuri Ariel needs to know that the Bedouin people should be free to control their own communities. So you can send a picture of a sheep or a goat or a camel to Yuri Ariel. You can draw a sheep or you can find a photo on the internet. Get creative and write a message on your picture, such as the phrase, "If you really want to respect the Bedouin people, their lands, traditions, and plans, abandon the Prora plan." We'll share the email addresses and fax number you can use to send your sheep. And there's also an online forum you can use to chat with a representative from the department. Thank you so much. We'll now get to work. Instructions are on the screen. Please note, Zoom does not allow on-screen links. Everything you need is being shared in the chat. We'll give you about 5 minutes to get started, and then we'll come back for the Q&A. Thank you all for participating in activism for Palestine. I didn't see anybody up and dancing. We'll now return to Mr. Alamour and ask him some of the questions you've been posting in the chat. Please continue to add questions as they come to you. The first one is, what is your situation about water and including drinking water? So how do you get that in the unrecognized villages?
In many of the villages, there is a very narrow, very small pipe of water that carrying the water to the village. They did that by themselves. The citizens of this place, the people, the villagers, they laid the pipe and they dig the land by themselves. And in many cases, it has many holes in it, and the water is dropping, and it's very problematic. I remember many houses, many people like the West Bank. They have tanks beside the roof. They cannot put them in the roof because the roof is a tin roof made of metal. So they put it beside the roof, and they drink the water after. In our case, we are better than many other villages. So we have a 2-inch pipe that we also stretched and laid it for 6 kilometers from Ksaifa, the neighboring town here, to the village, and distributed it to all the families. So in the water, we are fine up to now.
Okay.
But not all the villages.
We have greetings from Germany, and the question, how does the Arab party Ra'am, represented with 4 MPs in the Knesset, support you?
It's really very new, and we connect, as I say that very early to Omar and the friends here. It's early to judge them because their experience in this government is very new, and they just have composed this new coalition for less than 6 months, and we need to wait and see. But me and many of my friends, we are very optimistic that they will pressure and will make the right pressure on the government and take the right decisions to promote the recognition of the unrecognized villages. I'm not dreaming. I know that it's complicated and very hard, and we will not get everything that we want. But I think the general attitude to the Bedouin community will change, and this is the good thing. This is a small light in the end of the tunnel that we are waiting for.
It's good to have a little hope, isn't it?
Yes.
Have the people of al-Hiran received their promised plots of land and houses in Hira?
Yes. As I say, they were forced to sign to move to the neighboring town, which is Hura, and unfortunately, many of the houses were demolished, and not all of the people of al-Hiran have already received the plot to build their new houses. And I know that there are a lot of problems with the families, and we are trying to accompany them and help them and to receive and get all their rights to the end.
Are there some Bedouins still living in al-Hiran?
Yes, there are very few families that still living there, but many of the families have their houses demolished, and some of them were expelled from there very early, and some have already moved after killing the teacher Yaqub Abelgian in 2017.
What passport classification do most Bedouin have?
Classification?
Do you have passports? And if you do, are they Israeli passports or
yes,
are they Arab passports?
We are Israeli citizens, and we hold the Israeli passport. So we can use it and we can travel. In the past, we experienced many problems when we are when we are traveling. We were profiled always in the airport and being searched in different way from other passengers. Now it is a bit softer, but it's still, you know, still questioning you and asking many questions and so on. But it's still much better than the past. We are Israeli citizens.
Is there a timeline now for when Israel plans to carry out the immoral destruction of houses?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're still doing that. I can't believe that in the 21st century, in the third millennium, still countries demolish the houses of indigenous people in this world. I hope that one day I will open my eyes and cannot see that more. We still have like 2,000, 2,500 demolitions a year in unrecognized villages in the Negev and the Nakab. And this is we are very hopeful that this government will stop that, if not at least to freeze the situation.
What about health? Do you have your own healthcare workers and facilities?
In the unrecognized villages, we don't have health systems. The only clinics that we have are in the neighboring towns. Very few, one or two in the unrecognized villages. Most of the villagers of the unrecognized villages, they need to travel to the neighboring towns to get the service.
So maybe I could inject a question of mine here. So how far is a town from the village, and what's the relationship like between the people in the town and the people in the unrecognized village?
Sometimes part of the tribe is in the town and some in the unrecognized villages. There are some splitted families, but not always. Sometimes there is no any connection between them. They are different tribes, different families, but they need to go there because the neighbor, the closest or the neighboring village is the neighboring town is this town that they need to go, like school for their children, like the clinics, like the post office there. Banking, there is no banking in any of the unrecognized, and even in the towns, we have only one or two banks in Rahat. Rahat is the Bedouin town, is the Bedouin big city. It's about 70,000 people, and they have one branch till the last very few years. Then they opened another one after a long, big pressure on the government and the authorities.
Have you worked in collaboration with Amos Gewirtz, an Israeli activist who advocates for the Bedouin?
Yes, we are very good friends. Amos and I are very good friends, and we send updates for him, and he asks questions. And before he writing his reports and his don't say we didn't know, this is very weak reports that he writes and distribute. Amos is a good friend, and we really love what he does and did.
Was your own house demolished, and did you move to one of the recognized villages as an internally displaced person?
No, after the whole threats and demolition orders that we received, it wasn't only my house. All the houses in the village got the demolition orders, but we took them to the court. They wanted to take us to the court, so we took them to the court, and the primary court and the district court, they both denied and dismissed the demolition orders, and our house is now safe. But it doesn't mean that the village will be recognized, and doesn't mean that any new house will remain. So any new house is subject to demolition, but the old houses, thanks to God, they are safe now.
It's a good thing you became a lawyer, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you explain why the Bedouin do not wish to be sent to the government townships? Why are they unattractive places?
The towns are not really attractive. Our towns are very, very bad. And there is one thing that we need to remember: Bedouins and towns are not friends. Bedouins were not born to build in towns. They went to build to live in their rural life, their countryside life. And the most important thing that I want to say here, that all the towns that was built by Israel was a big failure. They are full of unemployed people, sick people, violent people, drug users. They are the poorest. You know, in Israel, we have a social economic scales, and we are in the lowest one. We all the 7 Bedouin towns that recognized and pre-planned by the government, they are all in cluster number 1, which means they are the poorest. And we don't like them. Most of the people don't like them. The government just try to put the pressure on the people. They want to force the people to leave their land, leave their culture, leave their tradition, leave their values and their ancestral lands and move to the towns, which we reject.
So would you say it's false to call the Bedouins nomads?
No, the Bedouins used to be nomads. This is not a secret. But in the very old, in the very long past of their life, and even when they were nomad in the past, like my great grandfathers, they were moving seasonally. They moved for 3 months in the dry seasons to seek a food, grass, and water for their animals. But they always returned home to their land. Now Israel sometimes use that against us, and they say, you are nomads, you don't have land, which is not right. It's a big lie.
Do Bedouins have problems getting building permits?
Bedouins don't have problems getting building permits. They don't get permits at all. They don't have at all. There is one authority that demolished their houses. There is no authorities that give them permits, unfortunately. I'm talking about the unrecognized villages, of course.
Yes, well, that's a very clear answer. Do you have solidarity connections to Indigenous groups in Australia, Canada, the US, Central America, and Scandinavia?
Yes, I met many of them, many of my Indigenous brothers in Geneva, in the Indigenous people conferences, and I really read a lot and learned a lot about their experience, their life, their challenges, and I'm sending them our love and solidarity from here, from Al-Nakab, from Asera, my village now. And we hope and pray for all of them to get their rights and equal rights.
So Mark, are there any more questions, or are we going to call it a day for questions?
There are no more questions that I can see. Oh,
Okay.
one just come in, hang on.
One's just come in. Let me just see what that is. What is the JNF doing nowadays in the Negev?
Oh, it's a good.
That'll take a while.
JNF is not stopping up anytime. They always have something to do in the Negev, bulldozing new areas and preparing them for forestation, Bedouin lands, of course, always. And nowadays, I can't see something special, but very few days before the elections, before the establishment of the new government, there was a lot of conflicts and demonstration against the JNF because they were trying to take over a Bedouin land and make a new forestation. but it was stopped or frozen, and we will see now. This is the big exam of our test of the new government. We will see what will happen if they can stop the JNF from taking a new Bedouin lands or not.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Mr. Alamour, for an excellent and heartbreaking presentation. We really appreciate the work that you are doing. A link to the video of this gathering, along with all the links shared today, will be available on the Kumi Now website on YouTube in a day or so, and it will be shared in the next newsletter. You can subscribe to Kumi Now on YouTube and subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you receive them. And we would greatly appreciate it if you shared this compelling session with your friends and colleagues, as well as information on our future sessions. Next week, we will focus on the history and reality of nonviolent action in Palestine. Our guests will be Cody O'Rourke of Good Shepherd Collective and Badia Dwake with Human Rights Defenders. If you'd like to be reminded of the online gatherings an hour before they begin, you can register for email reminders at kuminow.com online using the form at the bottom of the page. We hope to see you back here in a week's time. Thanks again, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. All the best.